What's your staying at a cheap hotel horror story? I'm a compulsive road tripper and I've stayed at a ton of cheap motels. By a wide margin, the most disgusting one I've visited was a Motel 6 south of downtown Salt Lake City. It was clearly a meth hotel for prostitution. Out west this isn't that unusual for a Motel 6 in a city, but trust me when I say this was by far the worst. Our room smelled so bad of smoke that my skin felt like it was frying. It was a non-smoking room with ashtrays, cigarette holes burned into the bed sheets, poop and various body fluid stains on the bathroom ceiling, walls, and floor. A used needle was still in the trash can. No towels in the room. You had to request them from the front desk and they'd give you a once-over before clearing you as worthy of cotton. Pimps were out in the parking lot all night blasting music and fighting while showing girls to various rooms. The Yelp page for this place has a picture of emergency response peeps taking care of a dead body. Wow, I actually live close to Salt Lake City, so I think I know where you're talking about. A friend and I were passing through St. Louis and needed a place to stay for the night, but all the hotels in St. Louis proper were either booked or super expensive. We found one in East St. Louis, not realizing it is the shadiest place on earth. Strip clubs on either side, entire building smelled like burnt rubber, crack smoke. Tried to open the window to get some fresh air and the guy at the lobby started yelling at us to close it for some reason. Turned on the TV and it was just straight up porn on the first channel. Friend was reaching behind the bed to get to the outlet to charge his phone and ended up with a handful of cum rags. Then to top it off, when we checked out in the morning, the guy tried to say we owed him $10 for stealing the TV remote. Moral of the story: St. Louis and East St. Louis are very different places. Do not make the same mistake. No shit, you had me right up until you said East St. Louis lol. People with flat tires in the highway just ride on the rims and then the rotors to keep from having to get off the freeway in ESL. Stayed a cheap hotel in London donkeys back. Was traveling and met up with a couple of mates doing their own travels. The room was 2 single beds, and being the only guy the first volunteered to sleep on the floor between the beds. I was the only one to escape the worst case of bedbugs I've ever seen. I don't know how they weren't in the carpet as well. The girls were covered head to toe. Shit was nasty, yo. I remember Gordon Ramsay would scan the beds for bacteria on his hotel show. Don't think there ever was a bed not covered in bacteria and dirty. We found the only room in town, but the service was lousy. Maids wouldn't enter the room and just left towels outside the door. Turns out that the last maid who entered the room was murdered there a week before we arrived. It was $15. The floor was squishy, my pillow had small bloodstains on it, and there were burn marks in the sheets. We told the main guy about it and he said, well, you already paid, so tough luck. The handyman was nice and kinda told him off, saying we should at least get a room that doesn't have a wet carpet, but we ended up staying in that room due to the owner being stubborn. Really should have slept in the car that night. Greater than pillow had small bloodstains on it. Bedbugs. Was on a few-week-long college school trip in northern Florida a few years back. Stayed at a very shady roadway inn where you had to ask for towels at the front. The key cards weren't keyed to specific rooms and there were several instances where other patrons walked in on a bunch of college students accidentally thinking it was their room. The worst part was that around 1 to 2 a.m. the people I was sharing the room with and I were awoken by a woman screaming bloody murder and pounding on the wall next door. She screamed, "Help, he's going to kill me," and, "Please dear God help," before there was a wet squelching noise and she stopped. We immediately called 911 and our class instructors, who were quite horrified. We fled the room to one of theirs to wait it out. When the police got there, the room was empty except for apparently a lot of blood and drag marks to the door. They forced the entire class to get up and we immediately left and found a different hotel for the rest of the week. So needless to say, I've never willingly stayed in a roadway inn again. Edit. The police did take down our information but have yet to get back to us for follow-up statements. So at this time I believe it's still ongoing or unsolved. My mom was traveling for work and sat next to a man, fellow business traveler, on the plane. They had a casual conversation and exchanged business cards. Later that evening she's in her hotel watching TV and gets a phone call from the front desk that her husband is here and they want to know if they can give him a key to the room. Turns out the creep on the plane was pretending to be her husband to try to get into her room. Well done, front desk staff, calling her to confirm. Pull up and know it's going to be bad, but it's 11 p.m. We're on our way home from a whirlwind trip, 900 miles each way. We go in and the deluxe room is basically 2 rooms together and makes no sense. Front room is 2 beds that look like they have been exactly the same since 1983. Back room is 1 bed, the TV, and the bathroom. There's wooden dowels in the windows for security. The scent of both rooms is reminiscent of a 1978 home of an elderly widower. Our dog was with us. She sniffed everything like crazy, then just stood in the room. Wouldn't relax. I was pissed and the husband knew it but was trying his hardest to convince us we'd make it one night. I was determined to sleep in the wooden chair. He tried the bed, tried getting our dog to lay with him, and she refused. After about 30 minutes he jumped up, said, "I can't do this," and we left. Ran out of gas halfway between there and our next destination. Waited 90 minutes in the middle of nowhere for AAA to bring us gas. Get to the next hotel about 2 a.m. and it's an amazing room for $20 less than the skeevy motel we abandoned. One had bed bugs. Another smelled like cat piss. But the worst hotels I've ever stayed in have all been in the UK and they weren't exactly cheap. One in Belfast had a shower in the room. Not separate, but next to the bed. It was in the photos and we were like, yeah, okay, we'll still book it. But came to find the shower door didn't close properly. Puddle of water next to the bed. The towels had stains on them and were tiny and didn't really soak it up. Oh, and it was next to a fucking nightclub. Never again. The worst part was the staff were fucking polite as hell, so I felt really bad checking out 2 days early. Ya know how a single spider egg sac has like 1 billion babies? Yeah, motel in Southern Cali had spider eggs hatch and there was a moving carpet of 1.5 billion tiny baby spiders. The eggs were behind the TV. On the plus side, they probably ate the bedbugs. Don't stay at a hotel that rents by the hour. In Argentina there are hotels by the hour, commonly known as tello, and are 100% used as couples hotels, where you rent the room for an hour of intimacy with your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, hookup. Most of them are quite decent with fresh sheets, towels every time, and the most fancy one will even have thematic rooms. I've been to one that had a room set up like a concert stage, another one like a jungle, and another one like a dungeon. All of them with props like guitars and such. The lobby had dimmed, black lights to make it more private in case there was more than one couple waiting, and in the fancy one you were able to do the check-in from your car, through a drive-through, and drive straight to your bedroom with private parking, so other people can't recognize your car. It used to cost around $10 per hour the common ones, and the fancy one was around $40 per hour or $100 for 6 hours, all this some 20 years ago. There was a massive mirror that stretched the full length of the wall where the bed was. I could swear it was a 2-way mirror. There was a crew on site filming a horror movie. It had an indoor pool that had plants growing out of it and you couldn't see through the water, like something was going to come out and drag you in. Our door wouldn't latch, so in the middle of the night when the AC kicked on, the door popped open just enough to hear the chain lock snap. We got a call at 2 a.m. from someone who kept asking how I was doing. His voice was very eerie and calm. He wouldn't change tone even after I was getting pissed, asking, "Who is this?" Later we thought it could have been a robocall and it just got stuck in a loop on the initial question. We had gotten in late and thought no big deal for one night. We were supposed to be there 3 nights. That didn't happen. You can check for a 2-way mirror by placing your hands around your eyes, almost as if you were pretending to hold up a pair of binoculars, pressing your hands against the suspected window, and trying to see through. Turning off or covering up all light sources on your end would help as well. I'm not sure how the science works, but if the light source on the other side is greater than the light source on your side, then the glass will stop reflecting, and start showing. Not that much horror, but pretty scary to me. I was in Budapest with a friend. We were staying at an hotel, just 3 kilometers from the city center, thanks, booking. Actually it was pretty far and in a not-so-tourist-friendly zone. Anyway, we come back to our room drunk, one night. At 3 a.m. someone knocks at the door. I do not answer, thinking they must have knocked the wrong door. After some seconds, the person knocks again, harder. They insist for some solid minutes, shaking the door and pulling the door's handle again and again. Add to this some quite unsettling Hungarian talking. After some minutes, they stop, not to reappear again. Never felt so close to be killed by someone. Long story short, room behind the headboard sounded like an orgy, room by the TV, opposite side, was non-stop fighting. Years ago I was driving to Florida with 2 friends and somewhere along the way we got very tired. Originally we planned to alternate drivers all the way there, so we had not considered researching motels or hotels along the route. We find a seemingly decent hotel with an outdoor pool. Awesome. After a short swim we all return to the room to get ready for bed. I turn off the lights and jump under the covers, and that's when everything went wrong. It was wet and sticky. I get up, turn on the light, and that is when we saw the entire mattress was soaked in blood. Turns out there had been a murder earlier in the afternoon and no one thought to check under the covers. Earlier in the afternoon, and they still let you into that room? Stayed at a cheap holiday camp with my parents as a kid. The holiday itself was great because my parents made it fun. I remember the caravan being run down and the shower curtain being covered in at least 10 fat black spiders. A mama spider must have laid eggs in the bathroom and all the siblings grew up and never left. Greater than a mama spider must have laid eggs in the bathroom and all the siblings grew up and never left. I enjoyed this description lol. The roof fell in, no one was hurt, but yeah. The lamp didn't work. Moved the nightstand to see if it's plugged in. Found a bunch of bare wires. Dangerous AF. Oh god, it was so fucking cheap. I could have stayed at a hostel, but circumstances proved to be a problem, so I just stayed at this place called the Green Tea Inn, and it was a horrible shitty hotel. To note, it's in Seattle, and if you know Seattle's Chinatown, they have a wonderful little place of historic buildings. The building at the time was old as fuck since the 1970s. We're talking about pages and pages of information all around, and it hadn't seen cleaning stuff in a minute. Stayed there for 3 days, and it was horrible. No Wi-Fi, place smelled like someone smoked a blunt. Turns out they did, and the person who was the owner came in my room out of fucking nowhere to see if I was still around, like. Yeah. Why would I leave and skip out, dude? Weird place all around. But the owner was a sweet lady all in all. Just a little odd a bit. I had bad feelings all around. Don't go to anything that's historic in a town. Just bite the bullet and deal with the hostile people. Woke up and there was a centipede on my wall. I hate them. I had this happen to me and I'm terrified of anything worm-like. I called the front desk to remove it. I only got voicemail and no one came. I also found a slug. Both I had to remove on my own by sliding a piece of paper under them and run screaming out the door. My partner had an interview in Oxford, so we stayed for a bit of a weekend trip. It wasn't even a cheap hotel, really, but quite nice inside and well kept. But the owners were really strange. Our first impressions of them was them arguing about something. Then there were more arguments with a guest that night at 11 p.m. Right outside outdoor. The final straw was that whenever they cleaned they left all of the room doors propped open with all out the guest stuff in full view. They also never locked the front door, so at the end of our trip when we were looking for my partner's camera, it had vanished. We left them a pretty scathing review, but they were completely useless with the camera. Not necessarily a nightmare for me, more of an oddity, but this hotel I've stayed at multiple times for work trips would always put me on the 5th floor. Same side, single, no smoking rooms, must have been grouped up. It was nice, actually. But 2 different times I walked in or out of my room to find a covered stretcher coming out of the room across the hall from me. Also one when I was a kid where we'd checked into it because there was a big winter storm and our house was out of power for days, but then the area around the hotel started to flood, so it was an evacuate or get trapped scenario. Then the usual string of common stories. Checking in and there's clearly an acrid piss puddle in the middle of the floor that was probably from someone sneaking a dog in and it not being cleaned right. One tiny room where the bathroom door hit the toilet if you opened it to about 70-degree angle. One where they decided to do a test of the fire alarm, alert system at like 7 a.m. when I'd come into town on a red-eye. One doing some really weird redesign, so it took like 3 different elevator or stairwell trips all on the opposite sides of the building to get from the room to the lobby. The stair part seemed especially concerning, fire code-wise. When I read you seeing the stretcher twice I remembered Dr. Doofenshmirtz saying, if I had a quarter for every time, I'd have 2 quarters, which isn't a lot but it's weird that it happened twice. Extended stay of Raleigh near the mall. Dirty, not vacuumed or wiped down. The kitchen sink dripped the whole time. There were no towels or toilet paper. Had to buy my own after the front desk refused to hand any over. Microwave didn't have a plate inside. The sheets were stained yellow. Pictures had been ripped off the walls and left huge holes. The water was black when I turned it on. When I tried to change rooms I was told there were no other rooms available, and being too broke to go somewhere else, I sulked back to the room only to be woken up by fighting and police outside and a staff member knocking on the door a few days later asking how long I was staying. I have not received a response from corporate yet, but apparently they are closing this site down for lack of maintenance and basic human care. Thank God. Website was misleading.
Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.